Hi folks, David Waring here again with InformedTrades.com and today's lesson of the day. In our last lesson we finished up our discussion on the US dollar with a look at some of the economic numbers which move the currency, as well as where traders can go to find out more information on those numbers. In today's lesson we're going to start a discussion on the next most actively traded currency in the world, the euro. So let's get started.
The euro is now the official currency of 15 of the 27 member countries in the European Union, which makes it the currency used by over 320 million people. Like Europe itself, the euro has an interesting history, which we as traders must understand to have a full understanding of the fundamentals of the currency. There are two major factors which led to the eventual formation of the European Union, and therefore the euro, which are important for traders to understand. Number one is the major powers in Europe had been battling each other for hundreds of years prior to World War II. Nothing like the decimation that the World Wars brought to Europe had ever been seen before, however. So after World War II, there was a realization that a drastic reordering of the political landscape was needed in order to put nationalistic rivalries to bed once and for all. Number two, and also as a result of World War II, the world's power structure had shifted, and the major European countries who were once the superpowers of the world were replaced by two new superpowers. The United States and the Soviet Union were now the unrivaled superpowers of the world, and as a result, there was a keen awareness among them that banding together was the only way for Europe to have a comparable clout on the world stage. It was primarily a result of these two factors that the European coal and steel community was founded, which eventually became the European Economic Community, the predecessor to the European Union. The general goals here were lowering trade barriers and facilitating economic cooperation for the benefit of member nations, increasing Europe's clout on the world stage, and integrating the economies of the major countries in Europe to the point where they were too reliant on one another to go to war again. During the next several decades, many things happened from a diplomatic and trade standpoint that are very interesting, if you're a history buff, and which can be read about by doing research on Google for the history of the European Union. The next most important event for us as traders, however, came with the ratification of something which is known as the Maastricht Treaty in the 1990s. Up to this point, the idea of a tie-up between nations in Europe was primarily focused on removing trade barriers and promoting economic cooperation. With this treaty, however, member countries moved from a simple economic cooperation to the much grander ambition of political integration between member nations. This is important for us as traders, as it is here that the plans for the single currency to be used among member nations was introduced, and therefore here that the basic fundamentals of the euro were laid out. There were three steps outlined in the Maastricht Treaty that had to be completed before the currency could be released, which were, number one, free circulation of capital among member countries. Number two, and most important to us as traders, was the coordination of economic policies. Once the euro was introduced, each of the member countries would be bound by the monetary policy as set by the European Central Bank. With this in mind, you could not have countries with extremely different levels of inflation and interest rates replace their currency with the euro without undermining the credibility and fundamentals of the currency. To make the currency credible and to make its introduction as smooth as possible, member countries were required to keep inflation, interest rates, and debt below certain levels. Lastly, they were also required to maintain an exchange rate that was basically a banded peg, allowing their currency to fluctuate only within a narrow band. Number three was, in 1999, the European Central Bank was established, and the 11 countries that you see listed here began to use the euro in electronic format only. These countries formed what is known as the European Monetary Union, which is comprised of countries who are members of the European Union and use the euro as their currency. Greece, the United Kingdom, Sweden, and Denmark, the other members of the European Union at the time, remained outside of the European Monetary Union for different reasons. While this may seem a bit like a history lesson rather than a lesson in trading, it is very important for traders of the euro to have an understanding of the history we've just gone over. As we'll learn in coming lessons, it is because of this history that the euro is where it is today, and many of the concepts we have just outlined still affect the value of the currency in today's market. That's our lesson for today. In our next lesson, we'll continue our discussion of the euro with a look at what happened when the euro was officially introduced and how the European Union and the European Monetary Union have expanded since the introduction of the currency. As always, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below, and good luck with your trading.